Yeah, you look too young to have done all that already.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And Bob, thank you very much for that introduction. You know, there's a joke among fighter pilots. How do you know if a guy is a fighter pilot? And the answer is, he'll tell you. Since Bob has already dispensed with all that, we'll go right into the presentation. What I would like to talk to you about this morning is what is happening this year at your Naval Aviation Museum here in Pensacola. But first, naval aviation, the marriage of airplane and ship. This ship here is an instrument of our national policy. This is 4.5 acres of sovereign U.S. territory that can go anywhere it wants to outside a 12-mile limit around the world. This ship is obviously capable of combat operations. It is capable of humanitarian operations. And it is good at doing both. And it can switch from either mission within hours. Our friends around the world love seeing this picture. Our enemies, not so much. There are 12 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers on Earth. The United States has 11 of them. France has 1. It's half the size and a fraction of the capability. This ship is one of the reasons the United States is a superpower. And that airplane there, which has a combat load on it, is capable of projecting power hundreds of miles inland, which it does every day over Afghanistan. It is a multi-mission aircraft. It has a pilot, in this case, that is highly trained. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Here's a couple of those pilots. These guys are typically in their late 20s, early 30s, by and large. They're flying over Afghanistan right now. To take off from an aircraft carrier and fly over Afghanistan and back is like taking off from the Gulf of Mexico, flying to Cleveland, orbiting for an hour, and then flying back. We're talking a 5 or 6 hour evolution. There's multiple in-flight refuelings involved in this. And flying back here to the Gulf of Mexico, finding that ship out there and landing on it, it's probably at night. This happens every day. And these young people here are making strategic decisions every day. They're flying over Afghanistan. They have a combat load on their aircraft. They are talking to Marines and soldiers on the ground. And they say, hey, we need air support right now. Okay, what kind of air support? Do you want us to fly fast and make some noise? Will that do the job? And sometimes that does. Or do you need us to expend some ordnance? Where do you want that ordnance? We want it on the hut. There's a lot of huts down there. Which one? So they're talking back and forth, and these guys are using their sensors and their training, and they have to make the right decision every time. Because if they don't, it's going to be on CNN within minutes, isn't it? Yep. This is happening every day, and there's young people here that are doing it. There's a couple of Hornets over the Arabian Gulf, the Persian Gulf. That in the lower right-hand corner is an Iranian oil well out there. You see the flare stack going. It's quite a landmark for those of us that are familiar with the Gulf. A couple of airplanes getting ready to go back to the ship and land. Pretty tough neighborhood. And to deter our enemies around the world is just as important as the combat operations that we participate in. The people that man naval aviation all start here. Everyone shows up in Pensacola. If you are an aircrew or if you are a wrench turner, an air traffic controller, aviation administration, everyone comes to Pensacola to learn the trade. When you see well, let me start here. 73% of Americans aged 18 to 24 are not even eligible to join the military. Most of that ineligibility is because they are out of shape. Too much video games, not enough activity. Single parents, obviously substance abuse, not completing a high school diploma, all those things. When you see a sailor or Marine in uniform at Cordova Mall or at the airport, probably with blemishes and maybe a withdrawn look on his or her face, you can be assured that that is a pretty special American. And that individual is going to be given tremendous responsibilities very fast. This is a Hornet on Cat 4 of USS Enterprise. Picture is taken December 17th, 1998, about 4 o'clock in the morning. About an hour and a half after this picture was taken, a Iraqi surface-to-air missile site near Basra was destroyed, with this aircraft participating. Here's what it looks like on night vision goggles en route to the target area. That's a EA-6B Prowler there, electronic warfare aircraft, jamming the way for the rest of us. You take a look at these images and hey, there's obviously, this is pretty intense. And there is there's courage involved, and there's commitment to excellence. But you find that with a a trick skier or some guy on a skateboard with a half pipe. There's obviously more than that, isn't it? It is service before self to something larger than any one individual. It's service to our country, and it's also a inspiration for the people that are doing this today, right now. How do they learn this? What inspired them to perform to this level? For me, and many of us, looking back at our ancestors, this is a PBY Catalina patrol aircraft. It's a painting, flown by Ensign Jack Reed on this, June 3rd, 1942, finding the Japanese fleet that was approaching Midway Island, that was going to attack Midway and then sink the American carrier fleet. Ensign Reed here got his PBY down on the water and circled around the Japanese fleet, radioing the position back to Midway and to Admiral Nimitz. This is 700 miles away, and a pretty old airplane here, 1942, 700 miles away. That's a long way from home, and there you're obviously in enemy territory. And this guy here, Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, commanding officer of Torpedo Squadron 8, aboard USS Hornet. He was flying an older aircraft in June 1942, and he knew that it would be difficult for him to fly his older aircraft against the Japanese Zeros and the Japanese defenses. And here he is taking off from Hornet in his TBD Devastator. This is a torpedo slung under the belly there with Chief Horace Dobbs in the back seat. Ensign George Gay was one of John Waldron's 15 pilots. This is a painting of Ensign George Gay, the only surviving member of Torpedo Squadron 8 after all the other 14 aircraft had been shot down and all those aircrew lost their lives. With his gunner dead behind him, George Gay dropped his torpedo on the carrier Soryu. The ship avoided it. George Gay was shot down and had a ringside seat for what was about to happen. Hours later, other naval aviators flying dive bombers from the 3 American aircraft carriers found the Japanese, destroyed 4 Japanese carriers. These are 4 Pearl Harbor survivors. Very, very effective weapon system, obviously. And turned the tide of the Pacific War and pushed back Japanese totalitarianism in the Pacific. And it's human beings who would be alive today, and many of them still are, that did this. Within a human lifetime, this occurred. And it's here, at the International Naval Aviation Museum, that stories like this and the history and heritage of naval aviation, which for 100 years has provided service and achievement for our country, is stored. This is a picture of Hangar Bay 1, which was built last year. It opened in January of this year. This is a 4 million cubic foot exhibition hangar, air conditioned. We have about 30 airplanes inside this hangar, many of which were outside in the elements, and the public couldn't see. We were able to bring these airplanes inside to better tell the story of naval aviation. And here's inside Hangar Bay 1. People can walk into the National Naval Aviation Museum and they see a jumble of airplanes, and okay, it's kind of cool. I can look at this jumble and I can tell you a compelling human story involving each one of those aircraft. It's really about human stories out there. And there are people, myself included, who will share those stories with me. This is a model of my old ship, USS Enterprise. Some guy built this in his basement over a 20-year period. This is a 72nd scale model of an aircraft carrier. You can't buy a kit for this. You can buy a kit for the airplanes that are on the flight deck there, and each one of those airplanes in itself is a pretty significant model project. But he built this over a 20-year period in his basement. And I think at some point the missus said, "Okay, you got to get that out of here." And so he was able to take it apart and send it to us. And this was put back together last year. It is just an exquisite model, and it's certainly something that we want to feature at the museum. To see a carrier like that with all the airplanes on deck, and he's got people there running around. It shows you what it's like. Mm-hmm. Has anyone here been on a carrier flight deck during class? There's a simulator, okay? So guys, that's terrific. Keep me straight, guys. This is a new simulator that we have. This is the Max Flight Simulator, just opened last month. This is a full 360-degree of pitch and roll simulator that you control inside. Inside it has a stick and a throttle. It also has a screen, and you can pretend that you're flying a F-4U Corsair over Iwo Jima in 1945, and there's some Japanese airplanes coming at you and chase them and shoot them down. Very, very popular. Here's some kids, having fun. This is the ground school before they get in those boxes, kind of figure out how the thing's going to work. We do big events out there. In Hangar Bay 1, we had a black tie gala in November of last year. Kira Phillips from CNN came down and was our mistress of ceremonies. Medal of Honor recipient Thomas Hudner was here. We do big events out there. Just over here at the mall, we have the flight deck store. Perhaps you've seen it. This is an adjunct of our museum flight deck store. The proceeds from this store go to support your National Naval Aviation Museum. This is a pile of junk.
Your plane, right? You walked away from it.
It once was a frontline SB-2C helldiver for World War II. It